Well, hello and welcome to Round Glass. I'm Vishvapani Blomfield, and thank you for joining me in this session in the series Beyond Breathing. Okay, so in today's practice, we're going to be using counting, and we're going to be using that as a way to stay focused on the breath. So I'd like to ask, what helps you to stay engaged and connected to a task, so any task? So we would love to hear from you, and we'd love to interact about that. So please use the chat to share whatever your experience is. So someone said to me once, well, isn't meditation a bit boring? And I thought about this, and I thought, well, I do sometimes get a bit bored in meditation. But actually, there's something else which is even more boring, which is my habits. My sort of habitual state of mind, that sort of drifting, floating, and just the same thoughts again and again. And when you meditate, you notice that that's what's happening. We sit down to meditate, and it's so easy to drift. And it really helps to have a clear idea about what we're doing at the start of meditation in particular. So that's how we interrupt those habits, how we bring a different kind of focus to mind. But because habits are really strong, we need to be quite conscious about it and quite deliberate. So the mindfulness of breathing, which we're exploring in this series, is the most basic practice in one of the oldest forms of Buddhism called Theravadan Buddhism. But it's taught in many, many different ways, and you may encounter different approaches to breathing meditation. So in some, counting is really important. And when I was first taught to meditate, I was taught to do what we're going to do today. So we breathe in, we breathe out, we count one. We breathe in, we breathe out, we count two. And as I was taught it, you do that up to 10. And then in the next bit, you breathe, you count one, you breathe in, you breathe out, you count two, you breathe in, you breathe out. So it's just a subtle shift. So in the last decade or so, I've been mainly a mindfulness teacher. And in that context, we don't use counting. And that may be how you've learned to do meditations on the breath. The reason we don't is it can encourage a sense of separation of me up here counting. In other words, I'm thinking about the breath rather than just being engaged with it, which is really what we're looking for with mindfulness. But what I've learned over the years as a teacher is that counting actually is very helpful, at least to some people. And so it's really helpful to try it out and to have it as an option. And the reason is that it's very, very important, very useful to be clear at the start of the meditation what you're doing. Counting is a really good yardstick. You know if you've got lost, you know if you're counting too far or if you've forgotten to count. So, as I said, I was taught to count to 10, but I suggest that you count to a number that's right for you. I think 10 may be too many, so maybe 6 or 7. So we breathe in, we breathe out, we count 1, and so we just drop that count in lightly. We're using counting to support awareness of the senses. So when you have a count, you know when you've lost track. But don't worry about it. Don't think, oh no, this all gone wrong. I can't even count to 10. Just come back to 1, okay? So you find yourself thinking about this and that. Right, I'm doing the meditation. Come back to the breath, breathe in, breathe out, count 1. And the point of this is not to get to 6 or 10 or whatever it is. It's not about counting. The count is there to help us settle. So we're gently guiding the attention. And actually, I still find it hard to get to 10. All sorts of things come in. So thank you for your comments in the chat about what helps you to settle. One person said music. I know from my experience that that helps some people. Other people find it really irritating. Deadlines, they help you really focus. Okay. Excitement, being excited about something. Taking breaks, making progress. And coffee. I think we can agree that coffee is the most important way to become deeply absorbed in something. So anyway, thank you for sharing your experiences, and let's bring that reflection on what it is to be really focused and absorbed to the practice today. Okay, so let's get set up. Just paying attention for a moment or two to how we're sitting. So comfortable but alert. Maybe take a deep breath. As we breathe in, the sense of the body rising up. So we come to our full height. As we breathe out, just have a sense of the body settling. All right, so let's do that again. We breathe in. The body rises up from the base. The chest naturally opens when we do this. And settling, so you don't have to move your arms around like I am. Just have your hands nicely settled. And as we settle, let the weight settle. So we can feel the contact between the body and the seat, between the knees, the feet and the floor, settling. Okay, just then you take another deeper breath. Breathe in, breathe out, and let it all go. Let it go. The day, the thoughts, the preoccupations, things to do, all that. Breathe it out. We settle. So this is a space to be present, to be here, to be aware, and just saying to ourselves, this is it. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get things done. I don't have to do any of it. For this time. Later on, I'll do it. For this time, I'm just here. It's okay to be here. This moment is enough. And what is present when we come to this moment? This body. My body. The only one I have. How's it feeling? So letting it settle. Settling onto the support beneath us, whether you're lying or sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor. However you're sitting, just letting the body settle. And this breath, noticing the breath, noticing how the body is moving, rising, settling. And of course, as we sit, as we create space, our thoughts are constant companions. Thoughts are with us. And these thoughts tug at our attention. They draw us. They tell us how interesting they are. And we very easily get drawn into thinking. So to start with, we can just notice that. Notice that thoughts do arise in the mind, and that there's this habitual draw towards them. And also they are often the same thoughts again and again. So we're going to counterbalance the pull of the thoughts with something very clear. So we know exactly what it is we're meant to be doing. We're going to count after the breath. We're going to count up to the number that's right for us. So we breathe in, we breathe out, count 1, breathe in, breathe out, count 2. And continue in this way up to a number that's right for you. It might be 6, 7, 8, whatever the number is. And then we come back to 1. So we breathe in, we breathe out, we count 1. So I'm going to be quiet for a little while, just to allow us to stay with the breath, stay with the counting. So it's very likely that thoughts will come in. And when they do, we may lose track of the counting. So we notice that and just start again. Don't worry about how it happened and where we went. We just come back to the body, come back to the breath, breathing in, breathing out, counting 1. And now we're going to shift where we count. Continue doing the same thing, but we're going to count before the in-breath. So count 1, breathe in, breathe out. Count 2, breathe in, breathe out. So we're anticipating the breath. And just using the counting to stay present. And making sure that we're connecting with the breath itself. So feeling the sensations of breathing, sensing how the body is moving. Just using the count to help us stay with that. So if you feel okay to drop the counting, then just staying with the breath now, with the sensations. If you're finding the counting really helpful, then you can keep doing it. But it's important to shift the focus to the breathing itself, to really bring our awareness into the senses, the sense of movement, different sensations, breath in the tummy, rising and falling. So just experiencing the breath, settling our awareness maybe around the abdomen. It's a good place to focus in the core of the body. And if we've dropped the counting, maintaining the same evenness of awareness. Thoughts come wandering through our mind. They come drifting through like clouds, and let them drift away again. Just staying with the breath. As we settle our mind on the breath, allowing space to be aware of the whole of our experience, how we're feeling, how the body is. Our state of mind, where our thoughts are taking us, our environment. So now we're just starting to move towards the end of the practice. Starting to move towards the end of the practice. So maybe introducing a little bit of movement. Just gradually disengaging our awareness from a single focus on the breath. I want to start moving your shoulders a little. Something like that. Really very individual how you make that transition. And bearing in mind that a transition is part of the practice as well. So even once we've started to move, we just can give ourselves some space, maybe to reflect a little, just take stock, all the time externalizing our awareness, opening our eyes when we're ready. And you're noticing what that experience was, how it was to engage with the breath, how it was to count the breaths. Was that helpful? Was it a little alienating? People sometimes find it a bit odd. Or was it just helpful to know where you are in this fog of thoughts and feelings? So thank you for the comment in the chat. I noticed the counting, and that helped me create a rhythm, a cadence, a downbeat to my breathing. And then my breath took over. Enjoyed this new technique. Okay, lovely. So thank you. At least it worked for you, the person who wrote that. That's good. Just want to comment a little bit on this approach to the practice. First of all, I'm not suggesting that you always count, but I think it's just there as an option. If you're doing a meditation on your own that isn't led in the way that we usually do with these sits, then it might be that sometimes, you notice your mind's really busy and you actually know, if I just sit here, I'm going to keep thinking about all of this stuff. So then it's really helpful. And in that way, the counting brings clarity, sort of an element of discipline there. There is a word of warning, though, which is that you might find yourself feeling that, oh, I've failed. If it becomes a goal to get to 6 or 8, whatever it is, and then we don't manage it. I can't even do that. What kind of person am I? I can't count my breaths up to 6 without wandering off. Okay, so if that sort of thing happens, then, well, that is a thought. And we should just notice it as a thought. And it may be a very familiar one. The name of that thought is being judgmental, judging ourselves and finding that we've failed. So we notice it and then we can come back. Okay, and the purpose of the meditation as a whole, including the counting, is that we become settled and absorbed, a little bit more settled and absorbed. So do we feel that, having done that practice? Do you feel more settled with the counting, even if you didn't manage to count up to whatever number you wanted to? If you do feel more settled, then, well, that was a helpful practice. The practice is simply about coming back to the breath. In the counting, it's telling us that we need to do that. And that's what you do, even if you have to do it 100 times. So there's lots to reflect on in that. I find that having a count means I'm much more aware, at least for that part of the practice, of the tension between being present and going with the thoughts. And for me, it raises the question of, what is drawing me towards those thoughts? What is it? Why are these so interesting, given that when I look at them, they're nothing new, just the sort of stuff that's going around my head all the time. So what is it that draws me to them? And what happens when I stop thinking about that? Is there some sort of a feeling, a tug back to thinking about this stuff? So what does it mean to let go of those thoughts? And so these are the kind of reflections that having something very clear, definite, like counting, can really encourage us to entertain. So to finish off, we'll finish with some lines by the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda, his 20th century poet, wonderful poet. And you'll see that these are very, very appropriate to what we've just done. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Now I'll count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. So thank you for sharing this time. Please continue to explore your meditation practice with us. Check out our daily live meditations at round.glass. Have a great day and stay present.